Chapter 1165. Xia Jiqing took a deep look at Bailey Hongzhuang. After confirming that Bailey Hongzhuang was telling the truth and did not hide anything, she was relieved. That's good. I always feel that Han Xiling is not a guy who is easy to deal with. Xia Jiqing curled her lips. Affinity was a very strange thing. When she first saw Bailey Hongzhuang, she felt very congenial, and when she first saw Han Xiling, she felt a burst of disgust. Even if he is difficult to deal with, it doesn't matter because I am even more difficult to deal with. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's joking appearance, Xia Jiqing couldn't help but laugh. That's right, you are a person who never suffers a loss. Hongzhuang's character has always been that if people respect her, she will respect them tenfold. This was the same as her opponent. Hongzhuang, where did you go to train during this time? Xia Jiqing curled her lips. After that, there was no news of you. We were worried that you would not come back. I will definitely go back, but this time the situation is very complicated. The location is very far away, and it is not convenient to send messages. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. She knew that Xia Jiqing really cared about her. We went to the bloody ground abyss this time. With Bailey Hongzhuang's voice falling, Xia Jiqing couldn't help but widen her eyes filled with an incredible color. Bloody ground abyss, one of the three abyss? The bloody ground abyss was so famous that she naturally heard of it, but she didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to go to this place. According to the information she learned, the bloody ground abyss was a gathering place for demons. Many cultivators once went in and never came back. Many cultivators regarded the bloody ground abyss as an excellent place to improve their strength, but for more cultivators, everything inside was no different from scourges and beasts. They were absolutely unwilling to go to such a place. Many cultivators who went there lost their humanity and completely fell. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Not bad. You guys are too bold. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but exclaim. She finally understood why Hongzhuang took so long to come back. Just how far was the blood ground abyss? Just traveling there would take a long time, and it was filled with danger. He was afraid that under such circumstances, Hongzhuang and the others would be wholeheartedly focused on their cultivation and would not consider other things at all. It's all right. Didn't I come back safe and sound? Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent. When she first learned about the blood ground abyss, she was very interested and didn't think of anything else. However, from the reactions of the others, she understood that many people did not accept the existence of the blood ground abyss. Hearing this, Xia Jiqing nodded. Indeed, as long as you come back safely. At this moment, Xia Jiqing completely understood. No wonder Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation could improve so much in such a short time. In such a dangerous place, it would be difficult for him not to improve quickly. Although the extent of this improvement was still somewhat abnormal. After the two lay on the soft couch and chatted for a long time, Xia Jiqing gradually fell asleep, and Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of the house. Chapter 1166. Xiaohe was very curious. Logically speaking, the news of Situ Yan's return was a big deal and the entire Tiangang sect should be in an uproar. However, Tiangang sect had been calm for the past 2 days as if nothing had happened. It was really strange. Sect master can't have left again, right? Xiaobai was stunned. If the sect master left again, it would be too difficult to accept. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head with a wise and far-sighted look in her eyes. Her voice was full of certainty. The sect master has just returned and can't leave immediately. It's just that the sect master has never appeared in front of everyone. Perhaps the sect master is waiting for Di Beichen to return. With the sect master's love for Di Beichen and his rare return and knowing that so many things had happened in Tiangang sect, it was impossible for him to leave without seeing Di Beichen. On the contrary, the sect master should not leave for a while. Master is right. I think the sect master should have successfully broken through this time. He looks to be around 50 years old, but his real age is definitely more than that, Xiaobai said immediately. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a faint light. When cultivators reached a certain age, once their strength broke through, their appearance would also recover some of their youth. This was especially true for powerful existences like the masters of aristocratic families and sections. Their strength was definitely not comparable to ordinary cultivators. Similarly, their lifespan would also be much longer than ordinary cultivators. One might look 50 years old, but in fact it was possible to be 60 or 70 years old or even older. This was the charm of cultivation. Many cultivators desperately cultivated in pursuit of immortality. Only after reaching that level could they understand the true meaning of life. If that's the case, then it's really good news. Her exquisite and alluring face revealed a clear and moving smile. Her already outstanding face was now even more charming and unforgettable. When Di Beichen returned to his bedroom, he saw Bailey Hongzhuang in such a state. His incomparably handsome face was filled with a trace of intoxication and admiration. "Wife, you seem to be in a good mood." Di Beichen quietly appeared behind Bailey Hongzhuang and wrapped his arms around her slender waist. The fragrance of Bailey Hongzhuang's body wafted into his nose, making him infatuated. When Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that there was someone behind her, she was extremely tense. However, after smelling that familiar scent, her tense body relaxed and she allowed Di Beichen to embrace her. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile widened. "That's natural. Everyone's already here." Di Beichen naturally understood what Bailey Hongzhuang was talking about. When he saw He Mu, he already knew that all the cultivators from the special enrollment class had arrived. "I've returned a little late. Has Han Shilin come looking for trouble again?" Di Beichen frowned. When he had heard He Ming's report, he had understood what had happened during his absence. It looked like he had made the right choice by allowing Hong Zhuang to cultivate in the stone room. Otherwise, a head-on confrontation would have been unavoidable. Come to think of it, he never thought that Han Shilin would actually refuse to listen to his advice. He had already made his intentions very clear, but Han Shilin had only agreed on the surface but opposed on the inside. Chapter 1167. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood his thoughts, Di Beichen praised in his heart, "My wife is really smart. Now that she is at her wit's end, she can't think of a way to deal with me, so she is messing around like this. You can do whatever you want as long as she doesn't provoke me. If she provokes me, I won't be polite." Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged, her expression indifferent and calm. She understood why Di Beichen was put in a difficult position. The Great Elder's position in Tiangang's sect was extremely stable, and Han Shilin was the Great Elder's granddaughter. For the time being, he could only punish Han Shilin, but he couldn't expel Han Shilin. After all, the first problem that Di Beichen had to solve was the two palace masters, Xiao Hongzhen and Jianghu. As for the others, they had to be put aside for the time being. As the clan master of an aristocratic family in her previous life, she was very clear about this situation, so she naturally wouldn't make things difficult for Di Beichen. This was because she believed in Di Beichen. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen also understood Bailey Hongzhuang's support for him, and his heart was moved. Immediately, his hands that hugged Bailey Hongzhuang tightened, wishing that he could directly knead Bailey Hongzhuang into his bones. "My wife, I love you." A low, hoarse and magnetic voice rang in Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. Her originally indifferent and wanton figure unconsciously stiffened, and her beautiful face was boiling hot. These three words always had an indescribable charm, and when these words came from Di Beichen's mouth, it made people even more addicted and unable to extricate themselves. Feeling the change in Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen couldn't help but stand in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Her blushing face added a trace of feminine charm. "My wife, until now you have never called me husband, why don't you call me that?" Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly startled. Even though she had already determined that Di Beichen was the person that she would hold for the rest of her life, she really couldn't bring herself to say those two words. "My wife, just call me that once." Di Beichen stretched out a finger and winked at Bailey Hongzhuang, his expression revealing a bit of desire. "I won't." Bailey Hongzhuang turned her body with her back facing Di Beichen. She really couldn't stand Di Beichen's teasing. "Just once, I won't tell anyone." Di Beichen's smile widened. He really wanted to hear it. "I won't. My wife, just once." "Wife, your husband wants to hear it." "Hongzhe, husband." As a soft voice sounded, Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise, his handsome face revealing an indescribable surprise. "My wife, what did you just say?" Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Di Beichen. She had already said it. "My wife, can you say it again?" Di Beichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's hands tightly, his starry eyes shining brightly, like a bright galaxy, gorgeous and full of charm. Bailey Hongzhuang originally wanted to glare at Di Beichen and ignore him, but after seeing the joy and desire in Di Beichen's eyes, her heart couldn't help but move. "Husband." This time, Di Beichen heard it clearly. He immediately hugged Bailey Hongzhuang excitedly and spun in circles on the spot. "Ah." In the garden, Di Beichen's unbridled laughter spread. All the flowers could feel his joy. Chapter 1168. Di Beichen, who was hugging Bailey Hongzhuang, felt as if he had the entire world in his hands. That kind of joy and satisfaction was something they had never seen before. After a long while, Di Beichen finally put Bailey Hongzhuang down. Bailey Hongzhuang blushed as she looked helplessly at Di Beichen. Everyone is here. Aren't you going to wake everyone up like this? However, Di Beichen didn't seem to mind at all. They would be happy to see this. Looking at Di Beichen's shameless manner, Bailey Hongzhuang felt helpless. She had long seen that this guy was a scoundrel by nature, just like how he had directly latched onto her in the past. However, this was her scoundrel style. "Oh right, Beichen, I want to tell you something." Bailey Hongzhuang stopped teasing him and became serious. "After you left, I saw the sovereign." She had to tell Di Beichen about this news first because Di Beichen had always been concerned about the whereabouts of the sovereign and was worried about the sovereign's recent situation. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. His deep and handsome eyes were filled with indescribable shock. "What did you say?" Bailey Hongzhuang nodded affirmatively. "I'm telling the truth." "Where did you see him?" Di Beichen's expression turned serious. In these 4 years he didn't have the slightest bit of news about his master. He didn't expect that Hongzhuang would actually see him. "When I was cultivating in the stone room, someone suddenly came in. I was worried that it would be someone else. I didn't expect it to be the sovereign. However, the sovereign didn't seem to have appeared in front of anyone. Everyone didn't know that the sovereign had returned." Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged her shoulders. She didn't know what the sect master was thinking. However, she believed that since Di Beichen had returned, the sovereign would definitely meet with Di Beichen. She was certain of this. Di Beichen frowned slightly. He naturally knew that what Hongzhuang said could not be false. As long as Master was back, it was a good thing. "As long as Master returns, he will definitely meet me." Di Beichen smiled faintly. It seemed that the situation was getting better. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "That's right. You should go back to your room first. Maybe the sect leader is waiting for you," Bailey Hongzhuang said. "Okay," Di Beichen replied. Now he had a lot of evidence. Since his master was back, it would be easier to deal with all these problems. At night, Di Beichen prepared good wine and delicacies to entertain the cultivators of the special enrollment class. They were all classmates. Now that they were gathered in Tiangang's sect, the atmosphere was even happier. "Hongzhuang, Di Beichen, thank you for inviting us to Tiangang's sect to participate in the assessment together. I toast you." Xia Jiqing raised her glass. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen smiled at each other and immediately picked up their wine glasses. "Speaking of which, I am grateful that you can come. With you and Hongzhuang participating in the assessment competition together, I can be more at ease." Di Beichen smiled and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with eyes full of affection. "Hongzhuang, I have one thing I don't understand. Since you have already come to Tiangang's sect, why do you still want to participate in the assessment competition?" Zhang Yunfeng couldn't help but ask the doubts in her heart. She always felt that such a move was a bit superfluous. Chapter 1169. Cui Haoyan also looked at Zhang Yunfeng. In his opinion, Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't participate in the assessment if she wasn't forced into a corner. Looking at the changing expressions of the crowd, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't mind at all and smiled, to be more justified. As soon as these words came out, everyone understood what was going on. Previously, they had neglected the pressure that Bailey Hongzhuang had to endure when she was with Di Beichen. All the girls were very envious of Bailey Hongzhuang's luck to be liked by Di Beichen. However, they had never thought about the things that they had to pay in order to stand by Di Beichen's side. Zhang Yunfeng also understood that her question was inappropriate and immediately said, "Hongzhuang, I..." Looking at Zhang Yunfeng's anxious expression, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and waved her hand. "It's nothing. I think that the assessment is an excellent opportunity to gain experience. You can see the outstanding cultivators from all over the world. Only with competition can you improve." She originally wanted to participate in the assessment because the assessment was a touchstone. She had to improve her cultivation as soon as possible. Chapter 1170. Everyone listened attentively to Di Beichen's introduction. In fact, if they hadn't entered the special enrollment class of the Azure Water School, they wouldn't have had the opportunity to participate in this assessment. Although this assessment is an assessment, it takes a very long time. It will take 2 years. As we all know, there are many monsters in the Xingxian continent. A few hundred years ago there was a monster riot. At that time, the humans suffered a very serious attack and were almost killed by the monsters. Hearing this, everyone's eyes condensed on Di Beichen. They all knew about the monster riot a few hundred years ago, but they didn't know what this monster riot had to do with the assessment. In fact, there were so many monsters that the humans couldn't deal with. So some peerless powerhouses deliberately created a small world and placed the monsters in it. However, the reproduction ability of the monsters is very amazing. Our human powerhouses found that these monsters were constantly reproducing in the small world. Their power is constantly trying to break the seal of the small world. Once they succeed in breaking the seal, they will appear in the Xingshan continent again and cause great damage to the human race. Di Beichen's voice was a bit heavy. There was a certain amount of risk in every opportunity. With Di Beichen's voice falling, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood. You mean that the place where we participate in the assessment is a small world full of monsters? Di Beichen couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. His wife was really clever, understanding with just a hint. Yes. If we participate in the assessment, we can help kill these monsters. On one hand, we can solve a hidden danger in the Xingshan continent. On the other hand, we can let the major sects understand our strength and recruit disciples. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a smile. This is really an excellent assessment method, killing two birds with one stone. Xia Jiqing and the others also understood, but they couldn't help but open their mouths. They never thought that the assessment would be like this. Where is that small world? Bai Junyu only felt incredulous. Does this mean that there's another place in our Xingshan continent that's occupied by demonic beasts? It's just that we don't usually see it? Looking at Bai Junyu's confused expression, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but explain. Space is a very mysterious power. Some powerful cultivators can use their own strength to construct a space that belongs only to them. You can think of it this way. That small world is like a spatial crack drifting outside the Xingshan continent, and that seal is the place where the small world and the Xingshan continent meet. Once those demonic beasts break through the seal, they will appear in the Xingshan continent. That will be a terrifying disaster. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with wisdom. After learning about the existence of this small world, she understood the need for the assessment competition that was held once every 5 years. The so-called small world was simply a battlefield. I see. Everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in amazement. They didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to know about this kind of thing. She was really amazing. Chapter 1171. Yes, just like what Hongzhuang said. Di Beichen nodded. So, if we participate in the assessment, we will be going to the small world to kill monster beasts? Xia Jiqing swallowed a mouthful of saliva. According to Di Beichen's words, the small world was completely a nest of monster beasts. Yes, so participating in the assessment will also be very risky. You also know the strength of the monster beast. It is definitely not easy to live in a place full of monster beasts for 2 years. In every assessment, the number of cultivators who fall in the small world is a large number. Therefore, you also have to think about whether you want to participate in the assessment. Di Beichen looked at the crowd. Although the assessment was an excellent opportunity for all cultivators, it was very risky. Once you entered, you may never be able to come out. Therefore, everyone should consider whether they want to go or not. After all, once you participate, there will be no chance for regret. He never felt that there was any problem with not participating in the assessment. Life itself was the most important. If you don't have enough confidence and strength, going to the small world is tantamount to suicide. Chapter 1172. Zhang Yunfeng and Cui Haoyan looked at each other. Both of them looked a little hesitant. Perhaps they were not as confident as Bailey Hongzhuang, nor were they as aggressive as Bai Junyu. However, after a short period of hesitation, the two of them expressed their stance together. We also have no problem. Seeing that no one flinched, a smile appeared on everyone's faces at the same time. Since everyone has made a decision, then I wish everyone the best. Di Beichen smiled. Every assessment competition lasts for 2 years? Xia Jiqing asked curiously. Di Beichen nodded slightly. Yes, there are a lot of monster beasts in this small world. Every time, the cultivators who participate in the assessment competition can solve a lot of them. If the time is short, it is simply not enough to solve these problems. Then why don't we let the various sects send people to solve these monster beasts? Bai Junyu frowned. Since these monster beasts were emerging endlessly, it was better to kill them all. This way there would be no more trouble. Compared to killing them every 5 years, this kind of situation would undoubtedly solve the root cause completely. The number of monster beasts is too amazing. If we want to kill them all, we will have to pay a price that we can't estimate. If they were so easy to kill, we wouldn't have had to create this small world to solve this problem. Di Beichen slowly said. The existence of this small world was also a big problem for the various forces in the Xingshan continent. They had always wanted to solve the threat of the monster beasts in this small world, but they really couldn't afford the price, so they came up with this method. Listening to Di Beichen's explanation, Bai Junyu nodded slightly. His thinking was a bit too simple. It seems that this time we will have a monster beast war. Dong Fangyu smiled. Compared to the struggle between humans, this struggle with the demonic beasts might be a little easier. White Lion's eyes lit up when he heard that there was an endless number of demonic beasts inside. As far as it was concerned, it wasn't endless demonic beasts, but endless demonic crystals. If it went to the small world, then it wouldn't have to worry about the demon crystals at all. Although your main opponents in this small world are Yao beasts, the competition between cultivators is not small either. In short, you have to act according to the situation. Don't trust others easily. Di Beichen's deep black eyes revealed a trace of worry. His voice was slightly heavy. The assessment competition that lasted for 2 years was very risky. He only hoped that the participants could return safely. Although this was impossible. We will. Everyone nodded. They were all people who cherished their lives. They only hoped that they could successfully pass the assessment and become a member of the sect. It's still too early to say that. We haven't won the right to participate yet. Gong Shaoqing's voice was still cold, but he clearly stated a fact. It was not easy to obtain the qualifications to participate in the competition. No matter how much they thought about it now, it would be useless if they could not obtain the qualifications to participate. By the way, Beichen, how many participants does your Tiangang sect have? Cui Haoyan looked puzzled. He had heard that each empire only had a few slots. Their group already had a lot of people, so it would not be easy to enter. Chapter 1173. Sects were different from dynasties. This assessment was organized by sects, so they naturally had the most number of slots. For sects, they did not have a problem with the number of slots. As long as they could pass the assessment, they would be qualified. However, it was definitely not an easy task to pass this test. This was completely dependent on one's own strength. No matter who it was, if they could not pass the assessment, then they would not be qualified. This was because every sect would not let a single cultivator affect their reputation. Hearing Di Beichen's words, everyone was relieved. This meant that as long as they were strong enough, they would be able to participate in the assessment together. There are also many opportunities in the pocket dimension. It is said that this pocket dimension was originally a part of the Xingxian continent. Once, a cultivator found an inheritance in the pocket dimension and his strength increased rapidly. Not only that, the pocket dimension has existed for many years. All kinds of medicinal herbs, ores, and heavenly treasures may exist. If you are lucky, you might be able to find a treasure. Di Beichen had a warm and charming smile on his face. This was one of the advantages of the pocket dimension. Inside the house, Bailey Hongzhuang sat in front of Di Beichen. Her beautiful face was flushed red from drinking, but her black eyes were still shining. Beichen, did you see the sect leader today? Her delicate and beautiful face showed a trace of concern. She had not heard any news about the sect leader today and was worried that Di Beichen would not be able to see the sect leader. Di Beichen's lips curled into his signature devilish smile. My wife is becoming more and more concerned about me. Seeing Di Beichen's teasing look, Bailey Hongzhuang's face turned serious. If you continue to be like this, I won't talk to you anymore. Seeing this, Di Beichen hurriedly said, my wife is mighty. Your husband won't joke around anymore. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled again. In terms of teasing, she could not compare to Di Beichen. However, when it came to putting on a serious face, Di Beichen was not her opponent. Everything is just as my wife expected. Di Beichen curled his seductive lips. I saw Master. Bailey Hongzhuang's dark and bright eyes were filled with joy. Her original worries also quietly dissipated. That's good. Wife, don't you want to know what Master thinks of you? Di Beichen blinked. His deep and charming eyes were filled with infinite charm. He only felt that the Hongzhuang in front of him was exceptionally cute. This little woman was especially concerned about his affairs, and he was very touched. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly taken aback, but she pretended to be nonchalant and asked, what's your evaluation? Di Beichen knew that Bailey Hongzhuang's indifferent look was a disguise, but he didn't expose her. He smiled and said, Master said that I have good taste. As he spoke, Di Beichen's expression revealed a hint of pride. He also felt that he had good taste. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to find such a treasure like his wife in the vast sea of people. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips unconsciously curled. Although the sect master had already expressed his thoughts when he saw her, she still felt very happy to hear it again. Di Beichen pulled Bailey Hongzhuang's hand, his eyes filled with deep affection. Wife, you can rest assured now. I said that master doesn't have any prejudice against family background. Hongzhuang had been worried about this problem before. He said that it wasn't a problem, but it still couldn't dispel the worry in Hongzhuang's heart. Chapter 1174. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a smile, clear and moving. She didn't say anything, but her smile had already explained everything. Wife, tomorrow is the day of the assessment. At that time, there will be other cultivators besides you who will be participating in the assessment. Many people in the sect will be paying attention to this matter. I will accompany you to the location of the assessment at that time. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, her eyes flashing with curiosity. How do you guys do the assessment? Wife, how do you think we should do the assessment? Di Beichen asked back. I heard that the assessment in the dynasty is a competition, and the strongest cultivators will be able to get a spot. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. Thinking about it, the majority of people used this assessment method, which was the simplest and most direct. Di Beichen's lips curled into a devilish arc and he chuckled. That is the way the dynasty does it. There is a certain flaw in it, and the sect's selection method is different. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang only looked at Di Beichen, wanting to know what Di Beichen meant by a better method. Tomorrow you will enter an assessment array, and there will be all kinds of environments and all kinds of monsters inside. The longer you can last, the more outstanding your ability will be. Not only us, many sects use this selection method. Di Beichen's eyes were filled with wisdom. The selection method used by the dynasty does indeed select the strongest cultivators, but in our opinion, having the highest cultivation and the strongest strength doesn't mean that one's ability is the strongest. In the small world, one may encounter all kinds of dangerous situations, which those cultivators who are only good at fighting in the arena will not be able to deal with. Courage and adaptability are also extremely important factors, so our selection will be even more perfect. Hearing Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood. What Di Beichen said was right. She had seen many cultivators perform extremely well on the battle stage, but their reactions in real danger were extremely bad. This was just like Lu Qingyue. Her cultivation was not weak. On the contrary, it was very outstanding. However, in the face of danger, she could not display her true strength. If such a cultivator were to go to a small world, their survival rate would be extremely low. Come to think of it, the big sects organized the assessment tournament to let the young cultivators go to the small world to kill the demonic beasts and improve their strength at the same time. It was not to send everyone to their deaths. So, this test is an illusion array? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Di Beichen nodded slightly. Not bad. The methods of the sect are truly different from the rest. Her deep phoenix eyes were filled with emotion and amazement. Just from Di Beichen's expression, she could tell that this illusory formation was not simple. 1,000 years ago, the sects and aristocratic families did not have this kind of selection method. She was very curious, wondering what kind of illusory formation this was. Seeing the curiosity on Bailey Hongzhuang's face, Di Beichen chuckled. Wife, you will be able to see it tomorrow. Although you know it is an environment, the effect is extremely realistic. Many cultivators find it difficult to face that scene when they use it for the first time. However, when it is used in the assessment, all cultivators will be taking the assessment for the first time. You have to be mentally prepared. I understand. Bailey Hongzhuang blinked. Just from Di Beichen's words, she could guess some clues. Chapter 1175. The next day the sky was clear and the sun was just right. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others got up early. Today was the day of the competition and they were all fully prepared. Di Beichen saw that everyone was ready and immediately smiled. Let's go to the assessment array together. Everyone nodded and immediately followed Di Beichen in the direction of the assessment array. Along the way, many cultivators were surprised when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Originally, they didn't know why this group of unfamiliar cultivators came to Tiangang's sect. Now that they saw the young sect master leading them in the direction of the assessment array, they understood. It turned out that these cultivators were all here to participate in the assessment competition. I heard that yesterday's senior sister Han had a conflict with Bailey Hongzhuang again. Now it seems that the young sect master is really protective of Bailey Hongzhuang. Senior sister Han has completely lost her previous status. Isn't that so? Didn't you see that senior sister Han rarely appears in front of us recently? Isn't it because of this matter that she doesn't want to come out to meet people? Everyone's eyes were locked on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. During this period, Bailey Hongzhuang was the focus of their attention. Han Xiling had been guarding Di Beichen for so many years, but Di Beichen's heart was completely on Bailey Hongzhuang. Whether it was from the point of envy or other aspects, Bailey Hongzhuang made it impossible for them not to pay attention to her. Bailey Hongzhuang walked beside Di Beichen indifferently. All the discussions would disappear when she returned from the assessment competition. Not long after, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others arrived at the location of the assessment array. At a glance, the assessment array was filled with cultivators, but most of them were here to watch the fun. There were only about 20 cultivators who were really going to take the assessment. According to Di Beichen's introduction, the cultivators here were recommended by some people with high status in Tiangang's sect. In fact, the cultivators who entered the assessment competition from the sect would have a higher status in the assessment competition. They were the real seeded contestants. Han Xiling came to the assessment array early in the morning. Since Bailey Hongzhuang announced that she wanted to take part in the assessment competition, then she had to go through the assessment array. She was very curious. If Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't even qualify for the assessment competition, then it would be a real joke. That day in the meeting hall, Bailey Hongzhuang was very clear. Therefore, not only Han Xiling but the Great Elder and the 4 Palace Masters were also there. After Bailey Hongzhuang, Bailey Hongzhuang, Bailey, and Bailey Hongzhuang Hongzhuang, Bailey Hongzhuang. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance, Han Xiling's gaze was fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang. The coldness and resentment in his eyes were obvious. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Han Xiling's face and then stopped paying attention. She was surprised by Han Xiling's persistence. Young sect leader. Everyone bowed when they saw Di Beichen. Di Beichen nodded. His handsome face was dignified. His gaze then fell on the cultivators who were preparing to take the assessment. Today is the day of the competition. I hope everyone can perform well and represent Tiangang's sect in the assessment competition. Chapter 1176. All the female disciples present had no resistance when they saw Di Beichen's handsome face. What's more, Di Beichen was the young lord of Tiangang's sect. However, the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang made the fantasy in everyone's heart fade a little, but this still did not stop their fantasy. Looking at the appearance of everyone's fighting spirit, Di Beichen was also very satisfied. His eyes then fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. He smiled and said, "You also go to the team to prepare for the assessment later." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others immediately walked into the team. In front of the disciples of Tiangang's sect, they would maintain absolute respect for Di Beichen. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' eyes couldn't help but fall on the illusion array in front of them. The scope of this array was not small. It had not been opened yet, but they could notice that there were many mysterious totems in the center of the array. Xia Jiqing curiously looked at the assessment array. "This is the illusion array that we are going to take the assessment in a while?" Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "Yes, it said that this illusion array can simulate all kinds of demonic beasts. When you take the test, you must control the fear in your heart and display your strongest strength." Fear was the most difficult emotion for human beings to overcome. Even if it was an illusion array, the feeling was still extremely realistic. Except for the pain, everything else was the same. Therefore, it was not a simple matter to pass this assessment. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the faces of Xia Jiqing and the others all showed a serious look. Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang both explained the illusion array to them. They also understood the content of the assessment and kept convincing themselves that everything they would face later was fake. However, no matter how well they convinced themselves now, it may not be as they wished during the assessment. The cultivators who were waiting for the assessment, after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, had a look of dissatisfaction in their eyes. There had always been a lot of capable people in Tiangang's sect. Even though the people from the special enrollment class had only shown their faces once when they followed He Mu to Tiangang's sect, everyone had already found out their identities. He was a cultivator from the special enrollment class of the Kanglan College and a friend of Bailey Hongzhuang. The Azure Water School did have a certain reputation, but that influence was only within the dynasty. For the sects, the reputation of the Azure Water School was obviously not loud enough. In their opinion, the reason why this group of cultivators from the special enrollment class could come to Tiangang's sect for the assessment was entirely because of Bailey Hongzhuang. This Bailey Hongzhuang really dares to do anything just because the young lord likes her. She came to Tiangang's sect to take the assessment by herself, but she even brought her friends here. The young lord also allowed her to fool around. It's really amazing. No choice. Who asked young sect master to like it? However, if these people don't perform well and can't even obtain a single spot, then that would be really funny. Everyone was talking about it. In fact, almost no one present was optimistic about the strength of Xia Jiqing and the others. Haha, in my opinion this possibility is very high. Han Xiling chuckled, and the words he said did not give Bailey Hongzhuang any face. When she knew that Xia Jiqing and the others came here to take the assessment, she felt that Bailey Hongzhuang had dug a hole for herself. Chapter 1177. Originally, the discussion of the surrounding cultivators had already made Gong Xiaoqing and the others' faces very ugly. They also knew that the crowd was right. The reason why they could come to Tiangang sect to participate in the assessment was indeed because of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. However, the crowd's denial of their strength was something they would not admit. Even if they were not born in a famous sect, they still had confidence in their own strength. Indeed, they may not be the strongest here, but they also had confidence that they would not be the worst. The other people's comments were fine, but Han Xiling actually took the initiative to find trouble, which was not something they could tolerate. The dignified young lady of Tiangang sect doesn't even have a little tolerance. Zhang Yunfeng coldly glanced at Han Xiling. Since Han Xiling was so rude to them, she naturally would not be polite to Han Xiling. This woman not only has no tolerance but is simply narrow-minded. Why bother with her? Xia Jiqing coldly snorted. She really did not like Han Xiling, but this woman liked to jump in front of them. Gong Xiaoqing, Dong Fangyu and the other men just faintly looked at Han Xiling. They could not argue with a woman, but the disgust on their faces was still obvious. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. Han Xiling usually found trouble with her, but now she also ridiculed Xia Jiqing and the others. It was too much. You really have a kind of magic that makes people hate you as soon as you open your mouth. As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang opened her mouth, her words did not give Han Xiling any face. The smile on Han Xiling's face suddenly froze, followed by a touch of anger from her eyes, revealing an unspeakable anger. Bailey Hongzhuang, do you really think you are so great? Han Xiling looked at Bailey Hongzhuang angrily. She couldn't bear the thought of Bailey Hongzhuang acting all high and mighty in front of her. When Han Hongyi saw the conflict between Han Xiling and Bailey Hongzhuang, he couldn't help but glance at Han Xiling. What happened before could be hidden from others but not from him. Before, there was no one on the side, so if there was a conflict then it was fine. Now there were so many people here, if Xiling had a conflict with Bailey Hongzhuang, it would damage her reputation. Noticing the warning in Han Hongyi's eyes, Han Xiling could only suppress his dissatisfaction for the time being. Looking at Han Xiling's repressed and resentful expression, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved slightly. She then turned around, too lazy to talk to Han Xiling. When Di Beichen saw the 4 palace masters and the great elder present, he couldn't help but chuckle. I didn't expect that today's assessment would attract everyone. What young lord is concerned about, we are naturally also very concerned. Xiao Hongzhen laughed aloud. He had been looking for an opportunity to take down Di Beichen. If Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't pass the assessment array today, it was naturally an excellent opportunity. Di Beichen glanced at Xiao Hongzhen indifferently. From the moment Xiao Hongzhen appeared here, he already understood what Xiao Hongzhen was planning. However, he believed in Hongzhuang's strength. Just from Hongzhuang's performance in the Bloody Abyss, he could see that Hongzhuang never lacked courage, perseverance and fighting strength. Although it was the first time she came into contact with the assessment array, he believed that Hongzhuang would be able to do well. Chapter 1178. Di Beichen nodded, but the words he said were not consistent with Qin Ai's question. They are all good friends I met at the Kanglin College. I think the 4 palace masters may not know that I am also a student of the Kanglin College's special enrollment class. With Di Beichen's voice falling, everyone was stunned for a moment. They looked at Di Beichen strangely. They really didn't know much about this matter. In fact, Di Beichen went to the Kanglin College after returning to the sect. Before Di Beichen returned to the sect, everyone often paid attention to Di Beichen's movements. After Di Beichen had stood up again, they didn't need to pay as much attention as before. However, they didn't expect that Di Beichen would also become a student of the Kanglin College's special enrollment class. This was really incredible. The people who had originally ridiculed the Kanglin College for not being able to stand in public also shut their mouths after hearing Di Beichen's words. Even the young sect master was a student of the Kanglin College. How could they dare to say anything bad about the Kanglin College? Han Xiling's face was ugly. Big Brother Di's words were obviously protecting Bailey Hongzhuang. In fact, Di Beichen was protecting Bailey Hongzhuang. He specifically emphasized the fact that Xia Jiqing and others were his friends so that everyone could not blame Bailey Hongzhuang. These people were invited by him and were also his friends. They had nothing to do with Bailey Hongzhuang. If someone wanted to find trouble, they could just come to him. It turns out that the young sect master has also been to the Kanglin College. The young sect master's friends are also friends of the Tiangang sect. Qin Ai smiled faintly. When he spoke, his eyes fell on Xiao Hongzhen and Jiang Yi. He deliberately asked this question to prevent Xiao Hongzhen and Jiang Yi from finding problems with him again. Xiao Hongzhen and Jiang Yi looked at Qin Ai coldly. Qin Ai was their stumbling block. Bailey Hongzhuang, Xia Jiqing and the others also smiled after hearing Di Beichen's words. With Di Beichen around, things are indeed different. That Han Xiling can only obediently shut up. Xia Jiqing smiled and winked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Originally, she was worried that Hongzhuang would be bullied by Han Xiling here. Now that she saw how Di Beichen was protecting Bailey Hongzhuang, she knew that no one could do anything to Hongzhuang as long as Di Beichen was there. A bright smile appeared on her alluring face. It was like hundreds of flowers were blooming, gorgeous and beautiful. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's smile, the eyes of many cultivators present condensed on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Bailey Hongzhuang's beauty could not be ignored by anyone. Originally, she just stood quietly and attracted everyone's attention. Now, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's smile, everyone couldn't take their eyes off her. Their eyes were full of intoxication and shock. No wonder the young sect master likes Bailey Hongzhuang. Such a woman, no man can resist her charm. Although Han Xiling is very beautiful, compared with Bailey Hongzhuang, there is still a big gap. The eyes of the male disciples present were full of admiration. Only as men, they understood the thoughts of the young sect master better. Listening to the emotions of the male disciples, Han Xiling's face became gloomy again. She was recognized by everyone as not as beautiful as Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 1179. Young master, since everyone is here, why don't we start first? Gu Jingqing suggested. Di Beichen nodded slightly, his noble and handsome face full of majesty. The qualification test for the assessment competition begins now. As Di Beichen's voice fell, the elder on the side immediately understood and his eyes fell on the group of cultivators who were preparing for the assessment. If you want to qualify for the assessment competition, you need to pass through the assessment array. As long as you can persist in the assessment array for 3 incense sticks, you will be qualified. If it is less than 3 incense sticks, you will be disqualified. In this assessment array, you will be in the mountains and all kinds of monsters will appear. You need to deal with them on your own. Once you die in the illusion, you will automatically withdraw from the assessment array. Is there anything you don't understand? The elder concisely explained the situation of the assessment array. Many foreign cultivators didn't understand what the assessment array was, so it was necessary to introduce its functions. No. Everyone shook their heads. They had a certain understanding of the assessment array from various channels before, but they had never really seen it. Now, 5 people in a group enter the assessment array. As the elder's voice fell, the 5 cultivators at the front hesitated for a moment before walking into the assessment array. They only saw the elder put a spirit stone next to the assessment array, and then the array started. Everyone only saw a ray of light enveloping the 5 people in the array, and from the facial expressions of these cultivators, they could see that they had fallen into the illusion array. The situation inside the assessment array is really bloody and violent. When I entered the assessment array for the first time, I was scared out of my wits. Yes, especially the first time you went in, your results were the worst. It is not easy to persist for 3 incense sticks. Although the strength of the cultivators who can come to the sect for the qualification test is good, there are not many cultivators who represent the sect to participate in the assessment competition every year. I think this time will be no exception. I am most curious about what results Bailey Hongzhuang and the group of cultivators from the Azure Water School will get. If the duration is too short, it will be embarrassing. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were sizing up the situation of the cultivators in the assessment array when the discussions of the surrounding cultivators gradually entered their ears. After all, their appearance today was already a hot topic. After hearing these words, Xia Jiqing and the others couldn't help but look dignified. Before coming to Tiangang sect, they didn't think too much about the problem. They just felt that this was a good opportunity. However, after facing the current situation, they realized that everything was not that simple. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were also under a lot of pressure to be able to come here for the assessment. If their performance today was bad, not only would they be laughed at by everyone, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen would also be implicated by them. This was not something they wanted to see. Gong Xiaoqing, Dong Fangyu and the others looked at each other. They all felt the existence of this pressure. In a situation where no one was optimistic about them, they could only encourage themselves. Only if they performed well enough would they be able to shut all these cultivators up. Chapter 1180. Survival of the fittest was the rule of the Xingxian continent. All respect must be earned with their own strength. They must work hard to obtain the qualifications to participate in the assessment competition. Not only for themselves but also for Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen for their trust. Everyone's hearts were filled with anger. Even if everyone was not optimistic about them, they would believe in their own strength. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows wrinkled slightly. She didn't think that these cultivators would keep saying such things. In fact, when Di Beichen first proposed it, she did not think that there would be such problems. Now listening to the ridicule of these cultivators, she only felt that it was particularly harsh and she also felt sorry for Xia Jiqing and the others. If it were not for her inviting Jiqing and the others to come to Tiangang sect together, they would not have to endure such humiliation. I'm sorry for everyone. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly, her delicate face full of guilt. You don't need to pay attention to these words. Just pretend you didn't hear it for the time being. Don't feel pressure. These remarks were not something she could stop as soon as she opened her mouth. She did not want Xia Jiqing and the others to bear all the unnecessary pressure because of her. Hongzhuang, this is not your fault. You don't have to apologize. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xia Jiqing was the first to answer. That's right. These words aren't completely targeted at us. Even other cultivators would have heard similar words under such circumstances. Dong Fangyu's face was filled with a gentle smile. Obviously he did not put these problems in his eyes. We are not so fragile. Gong Xiaoqing's voice followed. Bailey Hongzhuang turned her eyes and saw that Xia Jiqing and the others' faces were all showing an indifferent smile. Her worried heart was completely put down. Indeed, she underestimated the strength of Gong Xiaoqing and the others' hearts. Immediately afterward, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at the assessment array again. As time gradually passed, everyone noticed that the faces of the cultivators in the assessment array gradually turned pale, and beads of sweat gradually appeared on their foreheads. Their expressions were also different from each other. Some of them gritted their teeth and persevered, while others had looks of fear on their faces. Beside the test array, an incense stick was burning continuously. There was also a cultivator who was paying attention to the incense stick. Once it burned out, he would immediately light up the second incense stick. Look, the cultivator on the left can't hold on any longer, a cultivator's voice suddenly rang out. As the voice rang out, everyone looked at the cultivator on the left. They saw that the cultivator's face was getting paler and paler, and his eyes were filled with intense fear. Following that, the cultivator suddenly exited the assessment formation. He panted heavily and fell heavily to the ground with a pale face. A cultivator immediately walked to the cultivator's side and said, "It's all right now. Wake up." Hearing this, the cultivator was stunned for a moment. After seeing the surrounding cultivators, he revealed a look of understanding. However, the fear in his eyes did not disappear. Clearly he had encountered something extremely frightening. How long did I last? After resting for a while, the cultivator remembered the most important thing and could not help but ask. Chapter 1181. After knowing that he had only persisted for a stick of incense's time, the cultivator's face immediately became ugly. To qualify for the assessment, one needed to persist in the assessment array for 3 sticks of incense's time. However, he only persisted for a stick of incense's time. When he turned his head, he found that he was the first cultivator who could not hold on. For a time, feeling the eyes of everyone again, the cultivator only felt his face turn red. He was full of confidence before, but he did not expect his strength to be so weak. It seems that the scene seen in the assessment is really terrifying. This cultivator is scared to such an extent. Xia Jiqing's face was full of emotion. She believed that the cultivators who had reached this step would have a lot of experience. It could even scare him to such an extent. It could be seen how terrifying the scene he encountered was. We are likely to face the scene of our own death. His reaction is not strange. The dark eyes flashed with wisdom. There was nothing more terrifying than one's own death. In the face of one's own death, no matter which cultivator, it was impossible to let go. Xia Jiqing suddenly realized that if it was really such a situation, then it was really difficult to deal with. Not long after the first cultivator came out, another cultivator also withdrew from the assessment array. The reaction of this cultivator was the same as the first cultivator, and even when he withdrew there was a scream. If the disciples of Tiangangzong did not immediately go forward to remind this cultivator, it was afraid that this cultivator would not have recovered for a while. It is really not easy to participate in the assessment array. In less than 2 sticks of incense's time, 2 cultivators were eliminated. Cui Haoyan's eyes were filled with a trace of amazement. These cultivators were different from them. They had the opportunity to come to Tiangangzong to participate in the assessment array because they knew Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. However, these cultivators had the opportunity to represent Tiangangzong to participate in the assessment array. It could be seen that their strength was definitely not weak. However, these cultivators could not pass and the pressure on them was even greater. With Cui Haoyan's voice falling, Gong Xiaoqing and the others did not speak, but their expressions became more dignified. After the time it took for 2 incense sticks to burn, another cultivator withdrew from the assessment array. Only 2 cultivators remained. As the second incense stick burned out, everyone could guess the result in their hearts. 2 out of 5 cultivators were qualified to participate in the assessment competition. This was a good result. However, just as the second incense stick was about to burn out, one of the cultivators was forced to retreat. Seeing this, everyone couldn't help but sigh. This cultivator was just a little bit away from obtaining the qualifications. They didn't expect that he would fail at the last moment. It was truly too unfortunate. This cultivator's eyes were filled with annoyance when he realized that he had missed the opportunity by a hair's breadth. Compared to the 3 cultivators who had failed earlier, he was undoubtedly the most depressed one. In the end, only one of the 5 cultivators managed to hold on for the duration of 3 incense sticks. However, this cultivator exited the assessment array not long after the 4th incense stick was lit. After this cultivator knew that he had succeeded, his face was pale, but his expression was filled with pride and joy. This was the embodiment of strength. Chapter 1182. The second batch of cultivators enter the assessment array. After the end of the first round of assessment, the elder's voice was heard. Immediately after, the second batch of cultivators immediately entered the assessment array and began the assessment. The results of the second batch of cultivators were slightly better than the first batch of cultivators. 2 cultivators were qualified. Every cultivator who was qualified to participate in the assessment stood at the side and received the envious gazes of the crowd. This was the treatment enjoyed by the victors. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest stood quietly at the back. They came relatively late, so they took the assessment very late. After waiting for a while, it was finally their turn. Cui Haoyan and Zhang Yunfeng glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest and said, "Let's go in first." Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest looked at each other and nodded immediately. "Good luck." Cui Haoyan and Zhang Yunfeng nodded. "We will." Immediately after, the 2 of them walked into the assessment array with the other 3 cultivators. As Cui Haoyan and Lu Xian took part in the assessment, the surrounding cultivators were all watching their performance. They wanted to know how the 2 of them would fare. Chapter 1183. Zhang Yunfeng's eyes were filled with an incredible look. "But I feel like I've been in there for a long time." She only felt that she had been in the assessment array for a long time. She didn't expect that it was only a stick of incense worth of time. It really gave her a big blow. After really understanding the situation in the assessment array, she understood how difficult it was to persist for 3 sticks of incense worth of time. Bailey Hongzhuang and Xia Zhiqing helped Zhang Yunfeng up. Although this result was not what they had expected, they had no other choice at this point. Seeing Zhang Yunfeng being the first to be eliminated, Han Shiling's lips couldn't help but reveal a smile. He immediately looked at Tao Tsongrong next to him. Tao Tsongrong immediately understood and immediately chuckled. "I said that the strength of the cultivators of the Kanglan College is not good enough. The first to be eliminated, I thought they were great." As Tao Tsongrong took the lead to talk about this issue, the surrounding cultivators also nodded. Yes, although the Kanglan College has a good reputation in the dynasty, it is still not good enough here. Zhang Yunfeng was the first to be eliminated. In my opinion, the performance of the other cultivators of the Kanglan College will not be much better. Listening to the ridicule of the crowd, Zhang Yunfeng's face was ugly to the extreme. There was also a hint of shame. She really didn't expect such a situation. "I'm sorry I implicated everyone," Zhang Yunfeng said with shame. She wanted to perform well for herself, for the Kanglan College and for her friends. She didn't expect her performance to be so bad, implicating everyone to be ridiculed by others. Looking at Zhang Yunfeng's ashamed appearance, everyone quickly said, "This is nothing, you don't have to take it to heart." However, at this moment, Cui Haoyin and another cultivator withdrew from the assessment array at the same time. Both of them had persisted for 2 sticks of incense worth of time. There was still a long time before the 3rd stick of incense burned out. Cui Haoyin's face was also pale, but he quickly recovered his consciousness. After learning that he had never heard of the assessment, his face was a little ugly. One after another, in my opinion, the cultivators of the Kanglan College will not be able to pass. Han Shiling's mouth evoked a sneer. It seemed that she really had a good show to watch today. Just from the situation of Cui Haoyin and Zhang Yunfeng, she could predict the fate of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. If Bailey Hongzhuang did not pass or the cultivators of the Kanglan College were all wiped out, then she wanted to see how arrogant Bailey Hongzhuang could be. Even if Brother D was willing to protect her, she would still be despised by everyone. Young Master, the cultivators of the Kanglan College. Xiao Hongzhen felt a burst of joy in his heart, but on the surface, he pretended to be very helpless. He couldn't help but look at Di Beiqin. D. Young Master, even if you have a good relationship with them as the young master, you can't be too emotional. Jiang Yi sighed, his words revealing the meaning of teaching Di Beiqin how to do things. Palace Master Xiao, Palace Master Jiang, this assessment is not yet the end, you don't have to worry. Qin Ai slowly said. Chapter 1184. Looking at Di Beiqin's indifferent look, Xiao Hongzhen and Jiang Yi's eyes showed a trace of displeasure, but they did not continue to say anything. In their opinion, Di Beiqin was just putting up a strong front. Later, once Bailey Hongzhuang and the others failed, it would be even more difficult for Di Beiqin to step down. Young sect master, in my opinion, you seem to be too protective of Bailey Hongzhuang, right? At this moment, a man arrived late and slowly appeared in everyone's line of sight. With the appearance of this man, everyone's eyes fell on him, and their expressions revealed a somewhat unusual meaning. Bailey Hongzhuang also noticed this man. She saw that the man was wearing a black robe, and his age was about the same as Di Beiqin's. He was handsome and could be said to be romantic and elegant, but there was still a big gap between his appearance and Di Beiqin's evildoers. However, Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that a malicious light flashed inadvertently in this man's eyes. Even if his romantic and elegant appearance concealed it very well, the moment he saw Di Beiqin, this malicious light still uncontrollably showed itself. Almost immediately, Bailey Hongzhuang had already confirmed the man's identity, Jiangxia. Earlier, she had already heard that Xiao Hongzhen and Jiang Yi had been constantly finding trouble with Di Beiqin, wanting to push Di Beiqin down from the position of young sect master in order to push Jiangxia to the position of young sect master. However, she had never seen Jiangxia since she came to Tiangang's sect. She did not expect to see him on such an occasion. This Jiangxia is really arrogant. Even Di Beiqin came early, but he still dares to come late. Xiao He frowned. Just looking at Jiangxia's smile made it feel uncomfortable. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a mocking smile. This guy deliberately came late. Di Beiqin's sudden return must have given him a big blow. She could imagine how glorious Jiangxia was in Tiangang's sect when Di Beiqin was not around. However, once Di Beiqin returned, Jiangxia no longer regained his original position. It was tantamount to suddenly falling from the clouds. Today, Jiangxia had appeared again, presumably to laugh at them. Speaking of which, these 2 temple masters and Jiangxia were all menacing. That's true. Xiao Bai chuckled. When the tiger is not around, the monkey is king. When Di Beiqin comes later, Jiangxia will be beaten back to his original state. Jiangxia slowly walked in front of Di Beiqin. Although he called Di Beiqin young sect master, his arrogant appearance showed that he was not really convinced. Everyone looked at Di Beiqin and Jiangxia. The conflict between these 2 people was well known in Tiangang's sect. Now that Jiangxia was the first to make trouble, no one knew how the young sect master would solve it. Di Beiqin glanced at Jiangxia indifferently. The corners of his lips curled into a devilish smile again, and his expression was somewhat disdainful. As soon as she saw Di Beiqin's expression, Bailey Hongzhuang knew that Jiangxia was going to suffer a blow. What does it have to do with you that I'm protecting my wife? Di Beiqin looked at Jiangxia lazily. His low and magnetic voice was full of impudence and dominance. It was just Jiangxia. If it were not for the support of the two temple masters, he would have completely crippled him. At this time, Jianghu still dared to take the initiative to find trouble with him. He was simply courting death. Chapter 1185. Jianghu's face instantly became ugly, as if he couldn't understand why Di Beichen was so arrogant today. Previously, even though Di Beichen had swiftly and decisively regained the position of the young lord, but due to the pressure of the two palace lords, he had never directly confronted him. What was going on today? For a moment, Jianghu was a little embarrassed. Xiao Hongzhen and Jiang Yi's faces also changed a little. Di Beichen's performance today was indeed a little unusual. However, on second thought, the two felt that it was very likely that Di Beichen had to say this because of the failure of the Kanglan College's cultivators. Young sect master, aren't you going a little too far with your words? Xiao Hongzhen spoke slowly. His words were filled with the intention of awakening someone. Di Beichen glanced at Xiao Hongzhen indifferently. Does Temple Master Xiao have a problem with me? As soon as these words came out, Xiao Hongzhen was stunned again. Was Di Beichen going to take the initiative to provoke a conflict today? Not only Xiao Hongzhen, but even Qin Ai and Gu Jingqing also couldn't understand Di Beichen. They also understood that Di Beichen wanted to get rid of Xiao Hongzhen and Jiang Yi, but the two had been in Tiangang sect for too long and their positions were too stable. It was obviously impossible to uproot them immediately. However, as long as they were given a certain amount of time, they would definitely be able to get rid of them completely. Young sect master, what you said is too serious. Jiang Yi immediately said. However, Di Beichen didn't give any face to these two people at all. I'm the young lord. You only need to listen to my orders. As for my decisions, it's not up to the two temple masters to question. As for Jianghu, he's just an ordinary cultivator in my Tiangang sect. How dare he have a problem with me? In my opinion, you don't want to stay in Tiangang sect anymore, do you? The low and magnetic voice was full of domineering as usual. Di Beichen's expression was gentle and lazy. Even when he said such words, he still seemed to be talking about the good weather today. It wasn't that he couldn't uproot the two temple masters from Tiangang sect before, but they were both promoted by his master. On the one hand, he had to worry about his master. Now, all these problems no longer existed and he didn't need to be polite. As soon as these words came out, the cultivators present couldn't help but open their mouths and looked at Di Beichen in horror. Di Beichen was actually going to expel Jianghu from Tiangang sect directly? Jianghu's face was as gloomy as water. He could no longer maintain his previous elegant smile. There was a trace of panic in his eyes. He did not understand why Di Beichen had become completely different after his return. Young sect master, I've always treated Jianghu as my own son. What do you think of me by saying this? Xiao Hongzhen hurriedly spoke out, his expression full of displeasure. T's. Temple, T's, TSSSS. T, S's, S's. Don't tell me, you think Tiangang sect is yours? I respect you because you're a founding member of Tiangang sect. Don't take advantage of your seniority. Di Beichen's voice was light, but the words he said didn't give Xiao Hongzhen and the others any face. Qin Ai and Gu Jingqing looked at each other, and their eyes were full of amazement. Chapter 1186. Xia Jiqing, Dong Fangyu, and the others all looked at Di Beichen in amazement. On ordinary days, Di Beichen was always very kind when he was with them. At this moment, seeing Di Beichen like this, they really understood the power of the sect's young sect master. His casual attitude and arrogant and unruly words were simply shocking. Di Beichen is really too handsome. Xia Jiqing's eyes were filled with worship. She had previously felt that Di Beichen was very domineering, but now it seemed that her previous thoughts were too simple. This is the power of Di Beichen. These annoying guys dare to question Di Beichen, they really deserve it. Zhang Yunfeng clapped her hands and cheered. Even if she didn't know the internal situation of Tiangang sect, she knew that these guys were definitely not good things. Bailey Hongzhuang still had a cloud-like appearance, her rose-colored lips evoked an enchanting arc. It seemed that Di Beichen had already begun to make his move. These old guys were no different from the cancer of Tiangang sect. If Di Beichen really wanted to sit in the position of Tiangang sect, he needed to remove these tumors one by one. The atmosphere became stiff for a while, and even the assessment of the last group was suspended. The disciples of Tiangang sect were all looking at each other. They had never seen the contradiction between the young sect master and the palace master. Today they only felt that they worshipped Di Beichen even more. Han Shiling's eyes also showed a look of worship and admiration. This was the Big Brother D she had always worshipped. No matter what the situation was, Big Brother D always had a kind of domineering and arrogance that other men couldn't match, making people intoxicated. Taking advantage of his seniority. When Xiao Hongzhen was crowned with these words by Di Beichen, he could no longer keep calm. Di Beichen trampled on his dignity in front of everyone. If he was criticized by Di Beichen today, how could he maintain the majesty in front of the disciples in the future? Di Beichen. Xiao Hongzhen's face was full of anger, and he didn't even call him young sect master anymore. I watched you grow up from a child to the present. Since the sect master left, I have helped you take charge of Tiangang's sect. No matter what, I am your elder. If the sect master knows that you have become like this after growing up, the sect master will be very disappointed. Yes, even if you grow up, you can't forget your roots. Jianghu followed up. Since Di was so, they would teach Di Beichen a lesson in public. Di Beichen's majesty would also be dealt a big blow to Di's majesty. Di's majesties. Di Beichen would woods. Ji's Yang Li, as he Yang's his was wondering how Di would S's response? Di's Beichen's was put. This was making Beichen's Beichen was in his him? Di's Beichen's this. No matter what, Di Beichen would end up with a reputation of not respecting his elders. However, in the face of Xiao Hongzhen's and Jiang Yi's accusations, Di Beichen's lips curled into a cold smile. Over the years, he had long been tired of these two fellows' actions of taking advantage of their seniority. When Qin Ai and Gu Jingqing saw that the situation was so rigid, they wanted to speak up to ease the tension. Just then, a vicissitude and majestic voice suddenly sounded from behind. I didn't know that I needed Palace Master Xiao to help Beichen manage Tiangang's sect on my behalf. Chapter 1187. Sect Leader. Someone took the lead and shouted. Then everyone bowed and saluted. Greetings, Sect Leader. Qin Ai and Gu Jingqing looked at each other. They did not expect the sect leader to suddenly return. Before this, none of them knew about this news. Xiao Hongzhen and Jiang Yi's faces instantly turned ugly. They simply could not believe what they were seeing. The sect leader had really returned. In the past 4 years, there had been no news of the sect leader. They had also inquired for a long time, but it was as if the sect leader had disappeared from this world after leaving. Before the sect leader left, they had been very concerned about this matter. However, as time gradually passed, they had also forgotten about this matter. Now they only hoped that the sect leader would never return. After all, there was a certain amount of risk when a cultivator was looking for an opportunity to break through. Some strong cultivators had fallen while looking for a breakthrough. This was also a common occurrence. They didn't expect the sect master to suddenly return. Moreover, he appeared after they said such words. Almost in a short moment, Xiao Hongzhen and Jiang Yi understood that this was a trap set by Di Beichen. The reason why Di Beichen had acted like this before was to provoke them and make them say such outrageous things. Now that the sect leader had appeared and heard what they had said, he would undoubtedly be very angry. Xiao Hongzhen and Jiang Yi both stared coldly at Di Beichen. They did not expect that Di Beichen had become so calculative after not seeing him for a while. The complacency in Ji Yangsha's eyes dissipated in an instant and was replaced by a thick fear. He was about the same age as Di Beichen. He knew how much the sect leader doted on Di Beichen. When the sect leader was not around, his master and the others did not push him to the position of young sect leader. After the sect leader returned, he was completely out of luck with the position of young sect leader. Originally, he did not take Di Beichen's words seriously because there were 2 temple masters here. Di Beichen could not expel him from Tiangang's sect. However, now that the sect leader had returned, he might even have seen his previous performance clearly. Under such circumstances, even his master could not protect himself, let alone him. Situ Yen slowly walked over. Even though he did not say anything, the aura of a superior lingered in the air. It was the first time for many Tiangang sect disciples to see the sect master in person. They all looked at Situ Yen curiously. After Situ Yen walked to the side of Di Beichen and the others, the 4 palace masters bowed together. Greetings, sect master. Master. Di Beichen called out. Situ Yen waved his hand slightly. His gaze then fell on Xiao Hongzhen and Jiang Yi. His weathered and dignified face revealed a faint smile. I didn't know that the 2 hall masters would spend so much effort while I was away from Tiangang's sect. Even though Si Tuyen said it casually, Xiao Hongzhen and Jiang Yi could hear the anger in his words. They quickly knelt down and said, "Sect Master, we just spoke carelessly before. We didn't mean it. I hope Sect Master can forgive us." Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi were both sweating profusely. They dared to treat Di Beichen like that, but they absolutely did not dare to face Situ Yen. Situ Yen glanced at the two of them indifferently. Spoke carelessly? Chapter 1188. Although many cultivators didn't know the attitude of the two temple masters towards Di Beichen, they could tell that the two temple masters didn't treat Di Beichen well based on their previous performance. What's more, as the young sect master of Tiangang sect, Di Beichen was forced to leave Tiangang sect for 2 years. This was something everyone knew. Previously, everyone thought that if the sect master hadn't left, Di Beichen wouldn't have been forced to leave. Now that Di Beichen had returned, and the sovereign had also returned, she was afraid that the days of the two palace masters would not be easy. Di Beichen is the young sect master of Tiangang sect. No matter what you say, you can't disobey the young sect master. Si Tuyin spoke bluntly. He also knew the situation Di Beichen was facing. Now, it seemed that the situation was much more serious than he thought. Hearing the reproach in Si Tuyin's words, Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi's hearts sank. Si Tuyin's sudden appearance today was tantamount to giving them a head-on blow. All their previous plans turned into bubbles with Si Tuyin's appearance. When they thought of everything they had done before, they only felt that a great disaster was imminent. Si Tuyin was never a simple person to be able to become the sect master. Di Beichen's swift and decisive means were largely influenced by Si Tuyin. Don't look at Si Tuyin's kind appearance. When he was ruthless, he was cruel. I don't know. During the time I was away, Tiangang sect didn't value status but seniority. Si Tuyin looked at Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi meaningfully. Before he left, he never thought that Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi would be so bold to do such a thing. Just looking at the situation in front of him, he could imagine the suffering Di Beichen had suffered over the years. Speaking of which, he also felt that he owed Di Beichen a lot. Sect Master, we didn't mean that. Xiao Hongjin braced himself to explain. If this was confirmed, then their following days would be really difficult. What does that mean? Si Tuyin had no intention of giving Xiao Hongjin a way out. At this point, the selfishness of Xiao Hongjin and Si Tuyin could not be more obvious. All the explanations were just lame cover-ups. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Si Tuyin, who was so resolute. Her eyes lit up with joy. She was wondering why Si Tuyin hadn't shown himself even though he was messing around. It turned out that he was waiting for an opportunity to make things difficult for Xiao Hongjin. If Xiao Hongjin and the other two had known about the sect master's return, they would have done everything they could to cover up what they had done. As a result, they were able to find fault with the two of them, making it much easier to deal with them. Sect Master, Jiang Yi wanted to explain, but he couldn't say anything for a long time. This was because he simply could not find a reason to cover up all of this. Qin Ai and Gu Jingqing also looked at Xiao Hongjin and Gu Jingqing indifferently. Speaking of which, the two of them had brought this upon themselves. Jiangxia lowered his head. Once the two temple masters were punished, he wouldn't have a good ending either. Si Tuyin raised his right hand and stopped Jiang Yi. The two of you go back and think about it. Prepare for the punishment. Chapter 1189. Even though Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi were very unwilling, they did not dare to disobey Si Tuyin. They could only leave the assessment array under everyone's strange gazes. After Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi left, Di Beichen's gaze quietly fell on Jiangxia. Over the years, although Jiangxia did not go as far as Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi, he still had a lot of sarcastic remarks. Now it was time to pay them back double. Feeling Di Beichen's gaze, Jiangxia could not help but feel a chill from the bottom of his feet, making him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. In the next moment, Jiangxia no longer hesitated and hurriedly left behind Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi. With the departure of Xiao Hongjin and Jiang Yi, the atmosphere also eased a little. Dong Fengyu's handsome face showed a look of amazement. I didn't expect that I would have the opportunity to see the sect master of Tiangang sect. This time it was really worth it. The sect master, how many people did not have the opportunity to see him? Even the cultivators of the sect may not have the opportunity to see the sect master. Dong Fengyu did not expect that he would have the opportunity to see him today, and to see such a wonderful scene. Han Shiling's eyes also lit up after seeing Si Tuyin return, and his heart was filled with indescribable joy. She was also very dissatisfied with Jiangxia. No matter what, Jiangxia could not be compared to Di Beichen. There was only one successor of Tiangang's sect, and that was Di Beichen. Since Di Beichen did not listen to everyone's words, then he would definitely listen to the sect master's words. In this way, as long as the sect master was dissatisfied with Bailey Hongzhuang, then all the problems would be solved. Thinking of this, Han Shilling only felt that the clouds had finally parted and the moon had seen the light. This time Bailey Hongzhuang could really give up. Han Hongyi and Han Shilling walked in front of Situ Yen together and bowed to him, sect master. Situ Yen nodded slightly, put away his original seriousness, and his expression returned to indifference. Since it's over, let's continue with the test, Situ Yen said with a smile. Hearing that, everyone's gaze finally landed on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. All the cultivators before them had already completed their assessment. Only Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 4 had yet to undergo their assessment. Bailey Hongzhuang, Xia Jiqing and the others looked at each other. In this round of assessment, they must do their best to pass. Han Shiling's gaze also landed on Bailey Hongzhuang. She could only blame Bailey Hongzhuang's bad luck. Sect Master had just returned and she had to make a fool of herself in front of him. She would like to see how Bailey Hongzhuang would be able to make the sect leader fall in love with her after failing this test. The test begins. The elder's voice rang out, and he immediately put a spirit stone into the array. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Di Beichen, and Di Beichen also looked at her. His eyes, as deep as the sea, rippled with trust and affection. He had never doubted Bailey Hongzhuang's strength. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. She would definitely pass this test. Han Shilling looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen affectionately looking at each other, and her heart was filled with jealousy. She kept thinking about how she would ridicule Bailey Hongzhuang when Bailey Hongzhuang failed so that the sect leader would not like her. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to enter the assessment array, the sect leader's voice suddenly sounded. Chapter 1190. As Si Tuyen's voice fell, everyone looked at Si Tuyen in astonishment, their faces full of disbelief. What was this situation? Could it be that the sovereign had already seen Bailey Hongzhuang? Looking at Si Tuyen's loving smile, it seemed that he was very satisfied with Bailey Hongzhuang. Han Shiling's face turned green after Si Tuyen said this sentence, and his whole person stood in place in a daze. This was simply an impossible thing. Could it be that the sovereign felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and Big Brother Di were a good match? Han Hongyi was also a little surprised, but his face did not show the slightest clue. Just from Si Tuyen's attitude he could judge a lot of things. It seemed that Di Beichen and the others had already known the news of the sovereign's return, but the sovereign had never appeared in front of others. Xia Jiqing and the others looked at each other, and there was a happy and excited effect on their faces. From the day Han Shilling clamored in front of Bailey Hongzhuang because of her identity, they were a little worried that Bailey Hongzhuang would not be liked by the sovereign. The relationship between Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen was so good. If the sovereign looked down on Bailey Hongzhuang's background and forcibly separated them, it was something that none of them wanted to see. Now it seemed that the sovereign not only did not look down on Bailey Hongzhuang, but on the contrary, he liked Bailey Hongzhuang very much. How can the sovereign be like this? Tao Tsongrong's eyes were full of puzzlement. How can you do this to Miss? Han Shilling glared fiercely at Tao Tsongrong. From the moment the sovereign said this sentence, she had become a joke in the eyes of everyone. Tao Tsongrong was now really touching the pot that did not boil. So wouldn't it be a joke? In fact, as Han Shilling expected, the eyes of a group of cultivators fell on Han Shilling, revealing a little pity, a little sympathy and a little irony. It turns out that the sovereign is also very satisfied with Bailey Hongzhuang. No wonder the young sovereign would bring Bailey Hongzhuang back. So, Bailey Hongzhuang is the young sovereign's wife of our Tiangang sect? Isn't this nonsense? It's already a done deal. Everyone's heart sighed. Bailey Hongzhuang was really a strong presence in Tiangang sect, completely squeezing Han Shilling out of place. For an ordinary cultivator to do this, it was simply impossible according to common sense. Now it seemed that this Bailey Hongzhuang had also established a legend. A warm and sweet smile appeared on the beautiful face. Bailey Hongzhuang bowed to Situ Yen, and then walked into the assessment array with Xia Jiqing and the others. As soon as the array started, Bailey Hongzhuang felt an energy surround her, and then the scene in front of her had become completely different. She had appeared in the mountains, and in front of her, a group of wind wolves were flashing with hungry blue light, apparently treating her as a meal on a plate. Faced with such a situation, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly calmed down. It seemed that the situation was the same as what Di Beichen said. The lapis lazuli sword appeared in her hand. It was exactly the same as the one in the real world. In this illusion, everyone would have their own weapon that they were most comfortable with. Almost in a short moment, those wind wolves rushed toward Bailey Hongzhuang, wanting to swallow Bailey Hongzhuang into their belly. Chapter 1191. Bailey Hongzhuang's figure was like the wind, and her speed was extremely fast. She raised her sword and these wind wolves died directly in her hands. After spending some time to completely deal with these wind wolves, Bailey Hongzhuang continued to move forward. After walking for a while, another wave of monsters appeared in front of her. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was not surprised. In the face of the monsters, she was calm and indifferent, but the attacks in her hands were not slow at all. Bailey Hongzhuang found that every time she dealt with a wave of monsters, there would be more powerful monsters behind. However, this assessment array also had a flaw. As long as each wave of monsters persisted for a long time, it was possible to hold on for the time of 3 incense sticks. If they grasped this point, Xia Jiqing and the others were also likely to persist for the time of 3 incense sticks, but it was not known if they could find this point. For this situation, Bailey Hongzhuang was not surprised. In the face of real danger, no matter what method was used, as long as one could persist for a moment, there would be a higher chance of survival. In fact, many cultivators would not be as calm as Bailey Hongzhuang when they first came into contact with the assessment array. She was able to find these problems while dealing with the monsters. Most of the cultivators just held the idea that they could survive one round after another. They did not deliberately delay the time, but because of their own cultivation they had to slow down. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with excitement. Such an illusion array was really magical. Everything was no different from reality. If they could improve their combat level here, it was also an excellent way to practice. After 1,000 years, the sect's array had made such great progress. All the cultivators' eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 5 in the assessment array. They were the last wave of cultivators to participate in the assessment. What's more, Bailey Hongzhuang was such a hot topic, they also wanted to know if the woman the young lord liked was good or not. Han Xiling looked at all this coldly, only hoping that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others would fail quickly. However, as time passed, the first incense stick burned out. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 4 did not show any abnormalities. The second incense stick was lit, and Xia Jiqing and the others could not help but have some sweat on their foreheads, but their youthful faces were still full of determination. Zhan Yunfeng and Cui Haoyan looked worriedly at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Their defeat was mocked by the crowd. Since the result of their failure couldn't be changed, they could only hope that others would be able to persist until the end and fight for their school. Haoyan, do you think Gong Shaoqing and the others can hold on? Zhan Yunfeng's eyes were filled with nervousness. This feeling was more intense than any of her previous examinations. Cui Haoyan nodded slightly, his expression firm. I believe that they will be able to hold on until the end. Gong Shaoqing and Dong Fangyu were stronger than them, especially Gong Shaoqing. As the number 1 student of the Azure Water School, there was absolutely no problem. Xia Jiqing's progress in this period of time was also very great. Not only that, her determination to participate in the assessment with Bailey Hongzhuang was unparalleled. With this determination, Xia Jiqing might be able to hold on. As for Bai Junyu, he relied on the power of love. Chapter 1192. When the second incense stick burned out and the third incense stick was lit, the faces of the onlookers could not help but change a little. It must be known that many cultivators who participated in the assessment before did not persist for such a long time. However, until now, none of the 5 people in Bailey Hongzhuang's group had been unable to hold on, which was somewhat unexpected. Cui Haoyan and Zhan Yunfeng's faces showed a few traces of excitement. They only hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 5 could persist until the end. Han Xiling saw that Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 5 had persisted until now without any signs of defeat. Her face also changed a little. It was reasonable to say that with the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang's Orange Realm second stage, she could persist for 3 incense sticks, but the cultivation of Xia Jiqing and the others were all in the Red Realm. It was absolutely difficult to persist for 3 incense sticks. In any case, some of the 5 should have withdrawn by now. Why did no one appear until now? After Qin Ai and Gu Jingqing saw this scene, there was a faint smile in their eyes. It seemed that the strength of the cultivators of the Kanglan College was not weak. I didn't expect that these cultivators of the Kanglan College could persist for such a long time. It was really unexpected. Do you think they will persist until the end? This is definitely impossible. The time of 3 incense sticks is not so easy to persist. It's not like you haven't tried this assessment array before. Everyone was talking about it, waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang and the others to withdraw from the assessment array. You know, the closer it was to the time of 3 incense sticks, the more difficult it was to continue. The time of 3 incense sticks was a hurdle. It was extremely difficult to persist until then. Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 5 were immersed in the illusion and did not know the situation outside. The various monsters that appeared inside were overwhelming. Bailey Hongzhuang held the glass sword like a goddess of death. Whenever a monster appeared, she would take the lead and rush up before the monster attacked. After the trial of the Blood Tower, her combat effectiveness had improved a lot, but her endurance had improved even more. Every bronze man did not know fatigue, and Bailey Hongzhuang naturally needed extraordinary endurance to fight with them. Under such an abnormal cultivation, Bailey Hongzhuang's endurance continued to improve, and the time she fought was also longer. If it was a cultivator of the same strength, they would not be able to stand it after such a long time, but Bailey Hongzhuang did not seem to be tired. Her essence, qi and spirit were still at their peak. This was the magical part of human cultivators. As long as they worked hard, nothing was impossible. Gradually, everyone noticed that the faces of Xia Jiqing and the others showed a nervous look. Large beads of sweat had covered their foreheads, but their tenacious expressions showed that they were still clenching their teeth and persevering. Gong Shaoqing's face was as cold as ever. His unchanging iceberg face did not change at all. Obviously he was still at ease. Dong Fengyu's brows were tightly knitted. Although beads of sweat had seeped out of his forehead, he still didn't show any signs of defeat. Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing's demeanor was quite similar. Both of their faces were pale, and the way they clenched their teeth clearly showed that they were desperately holding on. Chapter 1193. That Xia Jiqing can't hold on any longer. Everyone's eyes fell on Xia Jiqing. Now there was only a third of the third incense stick left. It was obviously impossible for Xia Jiqing to hold on until the third incense stick burned out. Seeing this, Han Shiling's ugly face eased a little. If Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 4 succeeded in holding on for 3 incense sticks, then Bailey Hongzhuang would not only not lose face but also gain face. This was not something she wanted to see. As long as one cultivator failed, the other cultivators were likely to be unable to hold on one after another. Oh no, Jiqing can't hold on anymore. What should we do? Zhang Yunfeng's eyes were full of worry. She knew how much Jiqing wanted to participate in the assessment with Hongzhuang. If Jiqing did not hold on, she could almost imagine Jiqing's state. For the sake of your obsession, you must persevere. Zhang Yunfeng put her hands together and kept saying in her heart, only hoping that Xia Jiqing could hold on. Xia Jiqing's hands trembled more and more. Just when everyone thought that Xia Jiqing could not hold on, Xia Jiqing's face suddenly changed. It was as if there was an inexplicable force encouraging her. Her expression became firm, and even her trembling hands stabilized a little. I can't fail. Xia Jiqing's heart kept shouting. She had been injured in the battle with the monsters, and there was an unspeakable pain in her body. However, she could not fail like this. If she could not hold on for a while in this illusion array, how could she enter the small world and fight side by side with Hongzhuang? Under this huge obsession, Xia Jiqing once again stabilized. Looking at the sudden change in Xia Jiqing, all the cultivators present were stunned for a moment, and a strange color appeared on their faces. What is this situation? Xia Jiqing suddenly broke out? The third incense stick is almost burned out. These 5 people won't all pass, right? As the third incense stick gradually burned out, everyone only felt that it was incredible. This was too heaven-defying. There were 7 cultivators from Kanglan College. Before 2 people were eliminated, this round of 5 people all passed. The gap was too big, right? However, as everyone guessed, when the third incense stick burned out and the fourth incense stick was lit, it told everyone the result was that all 5 people passed. Just as the fourth incense stick was lit, Xia Jiqing finally could not hold on and withdrew from the assessment array. Zhang Yunfeng immediately greeted her. Xia Jiqing's eyes were closed, her face was pale, and the sweat on her forehead was particularly distressing. Jiqing, are you okay? Zhang Yunfeng quickly asked. Xia Jiqing was concerned about another problem. How long did I hold on? She closed eyes. She did not dare to look at her results. She really did not want to fail. However, she had already done her best to persevere until the very last moment. Looking at Xia Jiqing's worried and nervous appearance, Zhang Yunfeng's face showed a smile and said, 3 incense sticks. You have passed. As Zhang Yunfeng's voice fell, Xia Jiqing couldn't help but be startled. What did you say? I passed? Zhang Yunfeng nodded again and again. Yes, if you don't believe me, you can see for yourself. Xia Jiqing opened her eyes. After seeing the 3 incense sticks that had burned out, her face could not help but show a strong joy. Chapter 1194. Xia Jiqing immediately stood up. The paleness on her face almost disappeared in a short time and was replaced by an indescribable excitement and joy. All the cultivators present only felt that Xia Jiqing was very cute after seeing her expression. How much did she want to participate in the assessment? Shortly after Xia Jiqing left the assessment array, Bai Junyu also left. After Bai Junyu left the assessment array, his state recovered very quickly. He immediately looked at the time, and after seeing that the 4th incense stick had been lit, he also felt relieved. After seeing that Xia Jiqing had left the assessment array, Bai Junyu couldn't help but ask with concern, Jiqing, did you pass? Xia Jiqing smiled and nodded, passed, we all passed. Compared to the joy of Xia Jiqing and the others, Han Shiling's face was already ugly to the extreme. Were these guys on steroids today? 5 people all passed, what kind of concept was this? The strength of the young master's friends is not bad. Qin Ai's face was filled with a faint smile as she congratulated. Di Beichen's lips curved into a confident and evil smile. The reason why he invited the special enrollment class cultivators was for 2 reasons. First, it was so that Hong Zhuang would not be lonely. Second, it was because he was also optimistic about the strength of the special enrollment class cultivators. From yesterday's drinking, he had already guessed today's result. The real situation was no different from what he thought. The 4th incense stick has been lit, there are still 3 cultivators persisting, but I don't know how long they can last. All 5 of them had obtained the qualifications to participate. The result was already set, but everyone was still curious about how long they could persist. After all, the longer they persisted, the stronger their fighting strength and the stronger their psychological quality. The further they went in the assessment array, the more monsters there were. In the face of that kind of situation without enough psychological quality, it was impossible to persist. When the 4th incense stick burned 2/3, Dong Fengyu left the assessment array. When the 5th incense stick was lit, Gong Shaoqing also left the assessment array. Looking at the results of the Azure Water School's cultivators, the contempt in everyone's eyes gradually disappeared. Their performance in the assessment array had already proved their strength. At least, they were not worse than the other selected cultivators. This passing ratio was already very amazing. At this moment, only Bailey Hongzhuang was left in the assessment array. Everyone couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. They didn't know how long Bailey Hongzhuang could last in this assessment array. So far, among the cultivators who participated in the assessment, there were cultivators who persisted until the 5th incense stick burned out. No matter what, Bailey Hongzhuang's results were already very good. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang could survive the examination, her strength would increase by another level. At this moment, many cultivators believed in Di Beichen's choice. With Di Beichen's taste, the woman he liked would definitely not be bad. Si Tian looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, who was standing in the middle of the examination array, with a trace of satisfaction in his eyes. It seemed that this Bailey Hongzhuang was also a very hard-working girl. While everyone was sighing at Bailey Hongzhuang's performance, Bailey Hongzhuang was in the middle of a killing spree in the illusion array. This situation was very similar to when she fought against the bronze men. On the contrary, it might be easier to deal with these monsters. Yes. Chapter 1195. Even though the number of demonic beasts in front of her was shocking, Bailey Hongzhuang remained calm and did not feel any fear in her heart. In her previous life, the old man had told her not to worry about the number of opponents in front of her because the only ones who could exchange blows with her were the first wave. As for the rest, it was just a psychological effect. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang only focused on dealing with the demonic beasts in front of her. As for the demonic beasts behind her who were eyeing covetously, she did not care at all. She did not know when she would stop fighting. She only knew that she would not stop until the last moment. In a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang became the focus of everyone's attention. They only wanted to know how long Bailey Hongzhuang could hold on. Young miss, I didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be able to hold on for so long. Tao Tsongrong's face was a little ugly. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang's performance was outstanding, it would be harder for her young miss to deal with Bailey Hongzhuang. One must know that back then she was the one who went around telling the cultivators of Tiangang sect that Bailey Hongzhuang did not have any ability and only had the ability to seduce others. Now Bailey Hongzhuang had used her own strength to wash away all of this. In comparison, the one who found it hard to step down was her. Hearing Tao Tsongrong's words, Han Shiling's face turned ugly. At this moment she could not say anything other than staying silent. She only felt that this time, it would be really difficult for her to take down Bailey Hongzhuang. As the fifth incense stick was about to burn out, Bailey Hongzhuang was about to break the best record among the cultivators so far. Bailey Hongzhuang opened her eyes. The assessment of the assessment array had ended. However, on the other side, the fifth incense stick had not completely burned out. Seeing this scene, Han Shiling could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. The longer Bailey Hongzhuang held on, the harder it would be for her to step down. Fortunately, Bailey Hongzhuang did not become the best performer. However, soon the surrounding cultivators noticed that the situation was not right. Because Bailey Hongzhuang did not directly withdraw from the assessment array, but the assessment array ended automatically. This was very strange. Is there a problem with the assessment array? Why was Bailey Hongzhuang not ejected from the assessment array, but the assessment array closed automatically? I don't know, I have never seen such a situation, it is really strange. That's really a pity. Maybe Bailey Hongzhuang had a chance to surpass the best cultivator, but now that idea has been shattered. Everyone shook their heads and sighed. Of course, the feeling of the first place and of the second place. In their eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang, Bailey Hongzhuang. Of Bailey Hongzhuang. Now that Hongzhuang had missed out on the first place because of a problem with the assessment formation, it was depressing. How's this? Isn't it too depressing? Xia Jiqing's eyes were full of displeasure. She subconsciously looked at Han Shiling. Could it be that someone did not like Hongzhuang so they did something to the assessment array? Noticing Xia Jiqing's unkind eyes, Han Shiling also looked at Xia Jiqing coldly. Bailey Hongzhuang did not persist to the end, could it be that she was to blame? Chapter 1196. Qin Ai could not help but frown when she saw the situation in the assessment array. The assessment array ended on its own. Don't tell me that Miss Bailey passed all the assessments? As Qin Ai's voice fell, Gu Jingqing could not help but glance at Qin Ai. His eyes were filled with a trace of surprise. You're right. That's possible. There were many different assessments in the assessment array. When it was used to obtain a spot in the assessment competition, there were only a certain number of checkpoints in the assessment array as the cultivator's abilities were generally not very strong. Normally, if one persisted for 6 incense sticks worth of time, one would be able to pass all the checkpoints. Once all the checkpoints were passed, the assessment array's assessment would naturally end. However, until now, there had never been a cultivator who could pass all the checkpoints on their first attempt at the assessment array. If Bailey Hongzhuang only used 5 incense sticks worth of time to pass all the checkpoints, how intense was her battle strength during this period of time? This meant that Bailey Hongzhuang only used 5 incense sticks worth of time to kill the beasts that would normally take 6 incense sticks worth of time to kill. If that was the case, it would be too insane. Sect leader, young sect leader, the assessment has ended. The elder reported to Si Tuyen and Di Beichen slowly. Si Tuyen nodded slightly and looked at the cultivators who passed the assessment. Congratulations on passing the assessment and representing Tiangang sect to participate in the assessment competition. Hearing Si Tuyen's words, all the cultivators who were qualified to participate in the assessment smiled brightly. It was their honor to be able to hear the sect leader's congratulations. As usual, the cultivator who came in first in this assessment will receive a reward. As soon as he said that, all the cultivators present looked at the cultivator who persisted for 5 incense sticks worth of time. Wu Yuexin, Orange Realm Rank 4, was expected to win. Wu Yuexin smiled. Fortunately, she won first place in the end. Just as Wu Yuexin was ready to accept everyone's envy and congratulations, Si Tuyen's words made her smile freeze. Congratulations, Bailey Hongzhuang. Di Beichen's lips curled into a dazzling smile. His wife had always been outstanding, but her performance still surprised him. Qin Ai and Gu Jingqing looked at each other. It seemed that their previous guess was not wrong. Bailey Hongzhuang had really completed all the trials at an extremely fast speed. As soon as Si Tuyen finished speaking, the expressions of all the cultivators present turned grim. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. How could it be Bailey Hongzhuang? Wasn't it Wu Yuexin? I don't know. I don't know what's going on either. Could the sect master have made a mistake? Xia Jiqing, Gong Shaoqing and the others looked at each other. Although there was an unspeakable joy in their hearts, they were also worried that they would be happy for nothing. If he really made a mistake, Hongzhuang would be even more embarrassed. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint smile. She was still as indifferent as before. Sect master, isn't Wu Yuexin in first place? Han Xiling couldn't help but ask. Would the sect master be biased towards Bailey Hongzhuang? Chapter 1197. Han Xiling rarely came to the assessment array, so she didn't know much about the situation of the assessment array. However, as the great elder, Han Hongyi knew the reason very well. Bailey Hongzhuang's current situation was that she had completely passed the assessment array. Naturally, she deserved to be first place. Following Han Xiling's voice, everyone's gaze fell on Han Xiling and Si Tuyen. In fact, many of them didn't know the answer to this question. Facing Han Xiling's question, Si Tuyen smiled faintly. Bailey Hongzhuang has already passed the assessment array. Who else could it be but her? As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was stunned. Bailey Hongzhuang has already passed the assessment array? Does this mean that Bailey Hongzhuang has already killed all the demonic beasts that appeared in the assessment array? That's why Bailey Hongzhuang hasn't been ejected from the assessment array? Oh my god, is this really Bailey Hongzhuang's first time taking part in the assessment array? Isn't this a little too abnormal? Until now, I have never seen a cultivator who could achieve such a result on their first use of the assessment array. The cultivators who didn't know what was going on all came to a sudden realization. After a short moment of disbelief, they were even more impressed. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang's current strength was still far from the young sect master's wife in their hearts, the potential that Bailey Hongzhuang had shown was already very outstanding. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang was given a certain amount of time, Bailey Hongzhuang would also become a powerhouse. Han Xiling's face turned ugly. She began to regret asking this question. With the sect master's explanation, Bailey Hongzhuang seemed even more impressive. As for her, she grew up in Tianggang sect since she was young, but she didn't even understand these questions. It was really embarrassing. There are still 7 days before the assessment competition begins. Everyone should prepare well. After 7 days we will be taking part in the assessment competition. Si Tuyen slowly said before he turned around and left. The two hall masters followed closely behind Si Tuyen. They still needed some time to deal with Xiao Hongzhen and Jianghu. Di Beichen slowly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side, a charming smile on his handsome face. You did well. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her chin slightly, her bright and beautiful face rippling with an enchanting smile. Of course. Then Bailey Hongzhuang and the others slowly walked towards the bedroom. Although Zhang Yunfeng and Cui Haoyin did not pass the test, today's result was already very good for them. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others returned to Di Beichen's quarters, but Di Beichen had something to do, so he did not return with them. Come to think of it, the way the two temple masters treated Di Beichen previously, it was time for Di Beichen to repay them. This time Xiao Hongzhen and Jianghu, those two annoying fellows, are going to be unlucky. Baisher's eyes sparkled with excitement. Those two fellows had dared to make things difficult for its master. They were simply digging their own graves. Serves them right. Those two fellows were really arrogant. And that Jiangxia, I'm afraid that their intestines are green with regret now. Xiaohe laughed. It's best to make these fellows disappear from Tianggang sect. If they continue to stay in Tianggang sect, they will only be black sheep. Hearing the three beasties' words, Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Since Di Beichen has taken action, their punishment will not be light. Don't worry. Chapter 1198. Xia Jiqing was in a very good mood. She had been nervous all night yesterday. Today she finally succeeded in qualifying for the competition. She only felt relaxed and no longer had to be so nervous. Gong Shaoqing, Dongfang Yu and Bai Junyu all had a faint smile on their faces. One must know that in the entire Xingshan continent, there were very few cultivators who could get a place. Their ability to get such a place had already proved their strength. However, after seeing Zhang Yunfeng and Cui Haoyin, who were in a very low mood, everyone could not help but feel sorry for them. If Zhang Yunfeng and Cui Haoyin could also participate in the assessment competition, that would be the best result. Yunfeng, don't be sad, it is also very good to cultivate outside. Xia Jiqing could not help but comfort her. Listening to Xia Jiqing's words, Zhang Yunfeng's mouth pulled out a smile and said, I'm fine, don't worry. Cui Haoyan glanced at the crowd and said, I'll go back to my room first. Everyone nodded. In such a situation, Cui Haoyan just wanted to be alone. Seeing Cui Haoyan leave, Zhang Yunfeng also said, I'll also go back to my room to rest. Yunfeng, looking at Zhang Yunfeng's situation, Xia Jiqing was about to say something, but Bailey Hongzhuang had already stopped her. Let them be alone. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Their friends had all been qualified to participate, but they had not. It was difficult for Zhang Yunfeng and Cui Haoyan to accept this matter. However, she believed that Cui Haoyan and Zhang Yunfeng were not discouraged people. Even if they lost this opportunity, as long as they continued to work hard, they would also achieve something in the future. Xia Jiqing nodded slightly. She also knew that her persuasion had no effect at this time. There are still 7 days before we go to the small world. We have to start preparing the things we need to prepare quickly. After Di Beichen comes back, we will go to the trading market of Tiangang sect. The trading market would exist anywhere, and the cultivators of Tiangang sect often needed to purchase some other things. It was just that so far she did not know where the trading market was, so she could only wait for Di Beichen to come back. Okay. Gong Xiaoqing nodded. They had to live in the small world for 2 years, so there were definitely a lot of things to prepare. When Di Beichen returned to his bedroom, he saw Bailey Hongzhuang refining pills. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's concentration and meticulous appearance, Di Beichen's heart trembled. Bailey Hongzhuang had an indescribable charm when she was serious. She was good at many things. Once she said what she was good at, many people would be surprised. His wife was destined to be the center of attention. Even if the unfair treatment at the beginning made Bailey Hongzhuang covered in dust, now Bailey Hongzhuang had begun to bloom with her own light. He believed that it wouldn't be long before Bailey Hongzhuang would become something that would amaze everyone. Seeing Di Beichen appear, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Her attention was still focused on the pills in the furnace. As a cultivator, it was possible for him to use pills at any time and place. She was about to go to the small world. If she did not prepare more, she would not have such good conditions. Chapter 1199. Not long after, Bailey Hongzhuang finished refining the elixir and sat down beside Di Beichen. Is the matter settled? A faint smile appeared on her delicate and beautiful face. She could feel that Di Beichen was in a good mood. Di Beichen's lips curled into a devilish smile as he nodded slightly. It's settled. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't ask any more questions. From the moment Di Beichen said that it was settled, it meant that the 2 temple masters in Jianghu were no longer a threat to him. That's good. Bailey Hongzhuang was still smiling. She thought that Di Beichen would need some time to solve these problems. She didn't expect that he would be able to get rid of these threats in such a short time. My wife, the disciples of the Tiangang sect are all saying that I have good taste. Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a faint smile and a proud expression. Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly taken aback. Her clear and bright eyes were filled with a bright smile. How did you know? With Di Beichen's status, even if the disciples were to talk about it, they wouldn't talk about it in front of Di Beichen. Heimu told me. Di Beichen shrugged and was very calm. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh. Heimu had always been very concerned about her relationship with Di Beichen. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang, who was beautiful with every frown and smile, Di Beichen slowly held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. His black eyes were filled with deep affection. My wife, I can't accompany you to participate in the assessment. You have to be careful in these 2 years. Di Beichen's voice was low and depressed. He didn't want Bailey Hongzhuang to be separated from him. Whenever he thought of Bailey Hongzhuang going through unknown dangers in a place where he couldn't see, he felt a pang of heartache. However, he understood that Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to become stronger. She still had too many things to do. As a man who loved her, he couldn't confine her under his wings. His wife should always be the center of attention. Her dusty life didn't belong to him. He was willing to wait for her. Bailey Hongzhuang looked up and saw Di Beichen's eyes. Her heart trembled. She couldn't bear to part with him. I will. There are all kinds of dangers in the examination. I'm always worried if I'm not by your side. Di Beichen's handsome brows furrowed. If it was possible, he really wanted to go in with Bailey Hongzhuang. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. I will take good care of myself. 2 years later, you will see a stronger me. Her deep eyes flashed with determination. She would grow up as soon as possible and defeat Han Xiling in front of everyone. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's confident look, Di Beichen reached out and stroked her silky black hair. This woman whom he wanted to protect with all his life had to become stronger. As long as Hong Zhuang wanted to do something, he would support her. I will wait for your return. Di Beichen's smile was elegant and warm. His eyes flashed with a deep affection that could make any woman drown. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart trembled when he said that he would wait for her return. From the time they met until now, Di Beichen had always protected her and accompanied her to do everything she wanted to do. If it wasn't for accompanying her, Xiao Hongzhen and the others wouldn't have been able to do whatever they wanted in Tiangang's sect for so long. And she had always been doing what she wanted to do. Now that she thought about it, she only felt guilty. Beichen I. Chapter 1200. Needless to say, I understand. Di Beichen's eyes were filled with understanding. He felt sorry for Bailey Hongzhuang, because she had no choice but to become stronger. If he knew that his biological parents were in such a situation, he would also try his best to become stronger. Because it was a blood feud. He understood Bailey Hongzhuang's persistence, and he would help Bailey Hongzhuang to complete all of this. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang only felt a warm feeling in her heart. How lucky she was to meet Di Beichen in the vast sea of people. I love you. 1,000 words could not compare to a single, I love you. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Di Beichen, her clear eyes filled with emotion and affection. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen could not help but be stunned for a moment. Then his starry eyes were filled with deep surprise, joy, and even ecstasy. That pair of deep and enchanting eyes instantly blossomed with boundless light. It was like a resplendent river of stars, gorgeous and magnificent. Di Beichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand tightly. He had never heard Bailey Hongzhuang confess so affectionately. He only felt the blood in his body surging, and his whole body became light. Wife, I love you even more. Bailey Hongzhuang looked up and the two smiled at each other. Their eyes were filled with love that only the other party could understand. Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's love and affection, Han Shiling's mood was extremely bad. Whoosh, bang. Han Shiling smashed all the tea sets on the table to the ground, and her cold and delicate face could not hide the sullen expression. Damn it. Tiangang's sect was obviously her home ground, but now Bailey Hongzhuang had stolen all the limelight. This was simply intolerable. She originally thought that all the cultivators in Tiangang's sect should support her, but they were simply a bunch of guys who changed their sails according to the wind. Today, Bailey Hongzhuang had only achieved good results in the assessment array. Everyone began to praise Bailey Hongzhuang for being outstanding. Brother D had good taste. What are these things? Han Shiling only felt that the anger of jealousy was about to burn her to ashes. She just wanted to destroy everything. Looking at Han Shiling's appearance, Tao Tsongrong's face also showed a worried expression. Miss, don't get angry and harm your health. Han Shiling glared at Tao Tsongrong. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang is going to ride on my head, how can I not be angry? But young miss, it's not worth it if you hurt your health because of this. However, Han Shiling simply did not care about what Tao Tsongrong said. She continued to smash things. Only in this way could she vent the anger in her heart. She thought that she was the proud daughter of Tiangang's sect, but now she was suppressed by an unknown girl like Bailey Hongzhuang. If this spread out, it would simply be a joke. When did Han Shiling become an effect? However, after the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang, she was particularly embarrassed. When Han Hongyi came to Han Shiling's house, he saw the messy scene and his face suddenly became gloomy. Shiling, what are you doing? There was a hint of reprimand in his low voice. Han Hongyi had already expected that after today's incident, Han Shiling's mood would definitely not be good. However, as a well-bred young lady, Han Shiling's current actions were really inappropriate. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.